Hi guys, I started making another one of my how-to videos on a bayonet. Um, I seem to have lost half of my footage, so I'm going to do a few parts in between and explain. The bayonet I'm going to be doing, which I will mention in the video, is a K98K Mauser bayonet from the Second World War. This is a German one. Now, this bayonet has been dug out of the ground and is in relic condition. By relic condition, it means that it's really rough. Bayonets can be expensive to buy in good condition, and the relic ones you can get for a very low price. Now, the problem that I have with the relic ones when they're in the state that the ones I get are in is that they just look bloody horrible. So I will not say I restore it. What I'll say is I rebuild it. Right? By the time I've done, apart from the handle, there's very little that's original. So this is not a video on restoring one to museum quality. This is a video on making one out of the remnants of what's been dug out the ground. So please don't comment that, oh, you've ruined it, or oh, that's not genuine. I do these for my own personal collection. I don't sell them on. I don't make out that they're perfect bayonets and this is how they've come. So I'll stop at that point and we'll get to the video. Cheers for watching, guys. Hello again, and welcome to the shed again. Today we're playing with one of these. A lot of you are saying, what is that rusty piece of rubbish? That is actually a K98 bayonet. Second World War, from the German K98K Mauser. As you can see, it's in a terrible state. There's lumps missing out of the blade left, right and centre. The handle is deeply pitted, and it's a case of what can we do with it? Right, well, my first thoughts are this handle is so pitted that if I sanded it to get rid of the pitting, there'd be very little of the original shape left, and it'd probably be the size of a teaspoon. So my plan is, let me put this in the vise out of the way. My plan is to give this a quick rough sand, and then we can see where we're at. And these deeper holes, I'm actually going to blob weld onto them with the arc welder, and that will fill the holes in. It's going to be a messy and tricky job and what have you, but when it's done, it's going to be the original thickness, which is the important thing. The blade is well past saving. What I'm going to do with that is I'm going to cut it off just short of the hilt. I'm going to get a piece of flat steel bar, weld it on nicely, and then we will shape and make the blade. Right, I'm just going to shut my shed door because it's creaking. Sorry that things are now a bit darker, but that's the way it goes. So firstly, angle grinder with a sanding disc in. It's not a grinding disc. These are very rough and fierce, but not as fierce as a grinding disc. So I'm just going to pop that on and give this a quick tickle. Right, so what that's done, when this has been dug out of the ground, what they've done is the normal trick. They've cleaned all the surface rust off, and then they've waxed it to preserve it, because some people would keep it like that as a relic, but that's not how I like them. I like them as they should be. So when they've waxed it, what I've got to do is clean the wax off, basically clean the surface a bit better with the sanding disc, and that's give us a surface we can work with now. I haven't a clue how well this is going to show up on camera, so I do apologise in advance, but I'm going to fire my welder up and just blob in some bits we need, and then we'll see how we're doing. There's every chance the camera's going to hate this. Whoops. Right, that's the first going over of it. As you can see, it looks an absolute mess, blah blah blah. Let's hit it with a sanding disc. I'll lift this out so you get a better view. Right, we're not there yet, but you can see it's started filling the holes in, and that's what we want to achieve. So back to the welder. And again, back to the grinder. And same again, not quite there, but we just keep going like that. Now I'm not going to bore you silly by watching me doing all of that, so I'll cut off here. I'll finish doing that and I'll come back and show you when I've got it all how it should be. See you soon, guys. So what you've seen there is me start on the handle and build it up with weld where there's holes and grind them flat. That's only the first stage. That's to put the meat back into it. That handle will eventually progressively be sanded with finer and finer sandpaper until it's perfectly smooth. You could use a MIG welder for welding that if you so desired. All it is I find it easier with an arc welder than to just blob some in. It's quite a thick piece of metal, the handle, so you know a small MIG welder may bounce off it. The arc welder, I find, puts just the right amount of heat in on low for the metal to fuse together. The sanding disc I used in the video is quite a rough one. It's just got us the basic shape. Like I say, progressively sanding it will make it finer till eventually, when I've got it as smooth as I can, I actually polish it on a buffing wheel, which really makes it perfect. Right, we'll get to the next bit of the video and see what's happening there. And we're back again, guys. Right, as you can see, 99% of the pitting's gone. It's all welded up and then ground back. There's a few little bits, but chances are these were never 100% perfect when they came out. They were churned out for war. But a lot of these will disappear when we do the final sanding and tart it all up. The blade, I'm going to try something. I don't know whether it's going to work or not. I'm going to try and do the same technique as I've done on the handle. I'm going to put weld in the holes and then grind it so it comes like the handle. This would keep more of it genuine, which is what I'd ideally like to do. Obviously we've got gaps here. Whether I'm going to manage to build them up with weld, or the other option there would be to cut it out and put a new piece of steel in just on the bottom edge, which is probably going to be easier. But I mean, like I said, I could just chop it there, put a whole new piece of steel in and do it up, but then you're only talking about it being an original handle, not an original bayonet. The hand grips, I've got not genuine wood, but I've got a nice bit of mahogany that's going to go in there. I'm not going to put that on yet because I'm going to bond it with epoxy resin onto there, with epoxy glue rather, and then put false rivets in to make it look genuine. And I can't do that when I'm putting great amount of heat into it doing the blade. So I need to get the blade done, and then I can cut so it fits in 2 pieces of wood, clamp it up with the glue on and leave it overnight. The wood will still be proud and out of shape and that, but once it's on and bonded, I can then use the sanding disc in the angle grinder to shape it to where I need it to be. So that's where we're at. I'm going to have a couple of hours now welding at this, and I'll bring you back at various points and let you see what's happening. But as you can see, that handle now, the parts that show, they are really nice, and it's not lost any of its original thickness, which is very important. Like I said, if I'd have just ground that to smooth, it'd be as thin as a teaspoon handle. So here goes, guys. I'll catch you soon. Right, I did try my hardest to repair that blade. As you could see, it was a really hard job to even consider doing that, but I tried to keep it original. The problem you've got is the blades are hardened steel, and hardened steel does not like welding. It spits, it splatters, the weld falls off it. I am by no means a professional welder, so please bear that in mind when you're putting comments to this. But what I tried to do was I had a sheet of copper metal that I put under the blade and welded against. The idea being the copper would take the heat away, and taking the heat away would allow it to put metal in and not just burn holes in it. Now, even in doing that, it wasn't going to work. Right? You know, I'd still be there now doing it if I tried to do that. So in the end, the only option was to cut the blade off and to make a new one. Now, when I do bayonets, I never ever do them sharp. I never sharpen them up like a razor, which, you know, to be fair, most of the time they weren't. But it's a safety feature. You know, this is a big chunk of metal, and if someone took their mind to pick it up and try and cut themselves or cut someone else with it, they could cause a lot of harm. So with me not doing them like a razor, I use a mild steel. Now, a lot of you will be cringing, saying, oh, but it's meant to be hardened and tempered and this, that, and the other. This is for display. You know, we're not kidding ourselves. This is for display. So, as long as it looks, feels, and handles right, then why go to all the problems of tempering the steel, of heating it up, cooling it, heating it, cooling it? In the future, I want to make one and use a piece of Damascus steel for the blade. Now, that's really, I should have an example, but if you just Google Damascus steel, you'll see it's made the traditional way of folding hard steel and a soft steel together. Now, the hard steel gives it its strength, but hard steel is brittle. The soft steel in it allows it to be bendy, to be malleable, and you get a grain on that. You do it with acid to bring the grain out, but you get some gorgeous patterns. And in the future, I will do one with that, because just to show how beautiful it can be made. Right, so let's go back to the shed and see how far I've got. Thank you. Right, guys, here's the knife, the bayonet so far. The blade was totally knackered. I couldn't weld any into it. I tried my best. So in the end, I've got a piece of steel and I've made one. And then I've welded it in here and ground it back. So the blade's taking shape. The next thing we need to look at is the hand grips. Now, I've got some pieces of mahogany that I've started getting ready. I've sanded it there, and I need to shape it. But what I'm going to do, I've drilled the holes through that line up with the 2 holes in this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bond it on with some epoxy resin, and then I'll worry about the bolt holes later and how we're going to tidy that up. So I'll bond this on, I'll sand it till I get it a bit nearer, and then I'll be back to you. Thank you all. Right, that is as far of the footage as I can find. Somehow I've lost the last couple of pieces, so I do apologise, but I'll talk you through what I did anyway. Just going back to the blade a minute, when I cut the old one off, before cutting it off, I measured it. I measured the length of it. So then when I cut it, a new piece, and put it in, it was the exact length. Now, to get the exact shape, I did the same thing again. I overlaid the old blade that was shot, but you could still get an outline off it, and I cut it to that with a angle grinder with a fine cutting disc in. Go through hundreds of them. They cost a fortune. Anyway, I then had the job of putting what they call the fuller in it. The fuller is the groove that runs along the knife. Now, this is very tricky to do. On the K98 bayonets, they were made by numerous factories and came with numerous types of fuller in them. Some blades have just a very shallow dish as a fuller, and it's barely noticeable. Other ones have it square cut almost into it, so it steps down. This bayonet was somewhere between the two. Now, to achieve that, I had to mark it very carefully and score it with the angle grinder. To do this, to get the wider one, you're better off using a brand new grinding disc. So instead of being really thin like the cutting discs, it's already quite wide. And marking it very carefully and very carefully with the angle grinder, going up and down it till you get it to the depth you want. Now, notice I'm saying the depth there. To get the curved shoulders on it, to make it a dish rather than a step, which is what the angle grinder leaves you with, just to take some of that off, I then do it with a round metal file. And obviously, the more time or the less time you spend is how deep that turns out to be. Now, the actual curvature of the blade, I had to do, well, I find the easiest way is when I've got to the stage that I've just told you about with the blade, that it's welded on, that it's the length, that it's the outline. To get the shape, I then do it on a bench grinder, and that takes time. You can't rush it, because you can start gouging out bits of metal where you shouldn't, and one thing and another. And it's just, if you try and rush it, you'll get wound up. I do it as like a relaxing piece of work. I'll sit there, I'll have a cigarette or two, and I'll just run it up and down the bench grinder. Eventually you get it to where you want it. Like I say, I don't do mine razor sharp. I get the shape that it's supposed to be, but I don't do any sharpening on it. Anyone that does, in my mind, is a psychopath, because this is a killing machine, this thing. And it's like with weapons. If you collected World War II weapons, chances are you'd be getting the deactivated ones. They're safe. You can't put a bullet through them and shoot someone and this, that, and the other. And it looks totally the part. but it won't kill anyone. Not unless you club them around the head with it. I look at the bayonets the same way. Yes, they've got the point on them. Yes, you could still ram it into someone's ribs and kill them, but no one will ever be cut by one of the bayonets I've made. The handle, you saw me get 2 blocks of wood. Like I say, I make them so they're oversized. I cut them so they fit snugly in between the metal on the handle, and that's the only bit that's important, and then bond it on. Now, I could get a set of replacement bolts, but as soon as you start talking about replacement World War II bits, never mind how small, how simple they are, everyone wants a fortune for them. And like I said, this is me building one of these bayonets, not restoring. And I can't emphasize that enough. So rather than put bolts in, I bond it on. Or, to be honest, even if I had the correct bolts, I would still bond it on and then put the bolts in, because it just makes it stronger, safer, and neater. When the blocks of wood are on, like I briefly mentioned in the video, I then get the angle grinder with the rough sanding pad on, and I'll spend some time slowly taking bits off and shaping it to the knife handle. Now, this is above and beyond what the original wooden ones were done, because they were just factory made. So you might feel a step when you run your hand along the wood and then it gets to the metal bit. With mine, it's not, it's really smooth. They came with 2 types of hand grip. They came with the better ones were Bakelite, which is a very early form of plastic, and it had curved grooves down it for your hand to grip. Now, the other sort was wooden ones, which came in 2 forms. They came either with the grooves cut into the wood the same, or some of them were just plain wood. I mean, bear in mind, at the start of the war, Germany was probably making really high quality ones with a Bakelite handle, blah, blah, blah. By the time we get to the back end of the war, Germany just needs to rattle as many of these things out as they can. So they start cutting corners. Well, cutting corners, they make it simpler. And anyway, when I've got the wood to shape, I, on this particular knife, haven't put the grooves in it. Now, on other knives I do, and that. My bayonet collection, I haven't got it set out yet, but when I do, and I put a video of that on here, you'll see that I've restored them in all sorts and every shape and form that they could have come in, or slightly customized by me, which, you know, a lot of you are going to be getting upset about. But this one, I've done the handle plain wood. Now, like I said, it's mahogany. I've done it with a touch of stain to keep it dark when it's finished, and then I've used, this is a strange one that I've never heard of before till I got hold of it. I used matte lacquer in an aerosol can. Now, normally lacquer comes in the bright shiny stuff, or it comes in a satiny colour. This matte lacquer is brilliant stuff for protecting things, but keeping them right. Now, the metal parts on the bayonet, once the handle was done, once the blade was done and shaped and polished and made to the right form, the metal parts I did with something called rifle bluing. Now, that's available from gun shops or online or whatever. It's, as the name suggests, it's made for rifles. Now, these bayonets, like I said about the different handles and that, came in different shapes and forms. Some were just plain metal, some were blued, and some, I do believe, and don't quote me on this one, were actually done in chrome for dress bayonets for when they're marching. The rifle bluing gives it a lovely patina. They call it bluing, but it comes out more like black, to be fair. You just put it on a cloth and very carefully wipe it onto the metal, and it's like an acid. It goes into the metal and puts this colouring on it, and it protects it a fair bit, but it also looks very nice. Now, if you use this, you can put it on with a paintbrush, this way, that way, the other way. The best way is to absolutely soak a small piece of soft cloth in it and wipe it, because it's very easy to get streaks in it. And once you've got a streak in it, your only option really is to get the sandpaper out, sand it again, and start again. So then, once you've put one coat on, you can decide, do I want more? Do I want it really dark? Or do I want it just with a touch of it on? You can even, to age it, put it on and then with a very fine piece of sandpaper round the corners where it would have got knocked and used and worn, you can rub a bit off so it gives it a real aged look. Right, enough of my yabbering, let's have a look. Here's the bayonet I was doing on the film. Now, the blade is copied the same as the original, the shape of it and form of it and that. This one, you'll see I've got a bit of black here. I did actually have a swastika on there, but I've took it off for putting it on film because people don't like swastikas, and YouTube start getting upset and things like that, and I don't want that. You can see the handle part, let's try and get in on this, is the right shape. It's blued and then it's been rattled around in my cupboard for a while, so it's wearing off in parts, which is how they did. The blade has been blued as well. As you can see there, it's not perfectly sharp because I don't do them that way. And, oh, sorry, do apologise, don't report me. There's a little Africa call symbol on there with a tiny swastika on a palm tree. Don't look at that. The rivets, I've used copper rivets. I've put them in, peened them over, and then I've rubbed some bluing on them as well, which, all in all, I think that makes quite a nice bayonet. It's not restored, it's not an original, I'm not claiming any of that. It's one that I can display and say, that is an original handle, but it's been made to look like it originally did. And I've just got at hand a couple of other ones I've done. Oh, now, blued blade again. This one, brass handle. Now, as far as I know, they never made them with brass handles. I just thought that would make a really nice bayonet. This one has the ring on it to go over the barrel. It's not actually a German one. I'm not perfectly sure what it is. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Some of the Low Countries use these with the loop. Some of the Swiss ones are like that. some of the German export ones were, you find a lot of them the Germans got hold of when they were short of bayonets, and they actually, excuse me, they actually cut the lugs off to make it into one of theirs, so they could use it. So that's another one I've done. This bloody great monster is a First World War one. You see, it's got a right blade on it. Yes, I made the blade. This one, I haven't over polished it or anything like that. I've left it bare steel because this is what they call an emergency pattern one. You'll see the handle is one piece. The handle is a piece of metal, and these weren't blued, these were painted. So this is painted. You know, it makes it very easy to restore them when they're like that because a lot less work. But just to show you in comparison, Second World War, First World War, emergency model, a right old blade. Now, I'm not sure what I'm going to do on my next video. I've got a Russian hand grenade coming that's in poor condition, so I might do one on restoring that. I've got a couple of other German helmets still to do. I've got about 10 or 15 bayonets to do. So I'm not sure what the next video is going to be. But just on a personal note, the reason this video's late coming out is because I've been converting a transit van into a camper through lockdown. And I was umming and ahhing about whether to video that. Well, it's too late for me to video that because it's not far off done now. But what I am going to do, probably next year, 2001, is I'll sell this van that I've done up and use the money to buy another van and do the same thing too, only a bit neater, a bit better, and a more modern van. So there's quite a good chance you're going to end up getting a video of that. So I do apologise if you're only into military stuff, but yes, there'll be more military stuff coming soon. So I'd like to thank you for watching this video, and I hope you all stay safe through lockdown. Take care, guys.